Oh, g'day, Curd Nerds. Welcome to the Ask the Cheeseman, and this is episode 158. And today we're featuring a couple of special guests. But before we start that, I'd just like to say thank you to new patrons this week who support the show financially, and that is a big shout out to Anna Shilonosova. I hope I got that right, Anna. Sorry if I didn't. Paul and Paul Jerish. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Anna, for supporting the show financially, as well as all the other patrons who support the show and YouTube members who donate to the channel on a monthly basis, and you get some perks, which is cool. So lots of people on the chat, which is fantastic. We'll say some g'days a little bit later on. All right, we'll say some now. We've got Markinator, we've got Kim, who's moderating the chat today. You won't see her on screen, but you will see the moderation. G'day to Megan, g'day to Jim, Chris, Debbie, Cheese Therapy, who's texting on Facebook. We've also got Wendy, g'day Wendy. We've got Peckness, we've got Sadie from Istanbul, Chris. I know that Martin from Scotland's watching. He was on the chat a little bit before. We've got Jim, Julia from New Zealand. We've got Annette. G'day, Annette. And we've got Lindsay, Judy, and that'll do, I think. So let's, Anna. Hello, Anna. Lovely to see you all the way from Southampton in the UK. And Martin from Scotland, of course. There are a lot more other people who aren't in the chat at the moment, and unfortunately, Adnan, I can't read Turkish, so unless somebody wants to translate for me, I can only do English only. Sorry about that. Okay, let's bring them in. Let's bring in Sam and Helen from Cheese Therapy. I hope this works. Fingers crossed. There we go. There you are. How are you?
Hello.
G'day, Gavin.
G'day, how are you, Sam and Helen? Lovely to see you. And it's great that this new software can allow us to have guests as well. So that works really well.
Yeah, very easy to do. It's great. It's exciting to be part of this.
Yeah,
it is. Thank you very much. And so let me just introduce a little that I know, and then I'll ask some questions as we go along. And then we'll field some questions from the Curd Nerds themselves, who are chaffing at the bit, hopefully, to ask you some sort of cheesemongery sort of questions. Hopefully, I'll handle the home cheesemaker ones, and I'll farm some off onto the screen as we go along. How's that sound?
Sounds
perfect.
Good.
All right, cool. So, Cheese Therapy was launched in March 2016. It's based on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland.
Yep.
And the main thing that you guys is you get artisan cheese from Australian artisan cheesemakers, and you go and send those boxes out to subscribers or anybody who buys them off your website.
Yeah, pretty much. And not just Australia. When we started 2016, we were covering small makers right around the world. And it's important for people to try what the small makers are doing, because those are the guys that are really experimenting with their cheese. And that's the exciting part about what we've been doing. Not just doing the big brand stuff, not doing the typical, double cream, triple cream, white mold cheeses.
Yeah.
Just exploring into some of the cool stuff that's out there.
Yeah, indeed. And there's so many. Well, within Australia itself, there's so many artisanal cheesemakers now that it'd be a shame not to promote their products. I think a few of them have started from watching this channel. So, yeah, from some I've heard of anyway, I can't remember the company, but it was in southern New South Wales. The head cheesemaker started making cheese because she watched some of the videos on the channel. So that was pretty cool, yeah. So I cannot remember her name. Yeah, that was I was a bit chuffed about that. But so how do you source the cheeses that you source and select them for each of the Cheese Therapy boxes?
Yeah, we eat a lot of cheese, which is one of the great things. We know our cheese makers really well. We've developed really strong relationships with them. We speak to them every week. And at the moment, we're in the fortunate position where we can work with our cheesemongers, our cheese makers, and just say, I want you to make a cheese that you've always dreamt of making. And so we're not aiming at something that's going to be, commercially successful in a shop. We want them to start being creative again.
Yeah.
Getting back to, what the home cheesemaker can do, but now in a commercial environment. So we've been able to build the creativity of the Australian cheesemakers in that regard. In every box, we've got a hard, soft, stinky, and a blue cheese.
Yeah.
And then really just understanding from our perspective what cheeses are in season, what the makers are thinking, what they've always wanted to make, and then really trying to curate something that's going to reflect sometimes a theme for the month, but a lot of the time an exploration of something that's really new in the world of cheese.
And also we have cheese maker packs where the pack is just for one particular cheesemaker. And with those packs, we let the cheesemaker choose what's seasonal or what best highlights their, cheeses at the moment. So they pick the cheeses for those packs.
So they pick the cheese board for you.
Yeah. It's great because the cheesemaker gets to show off their business. And, for the first time, smaller Australian cheesemakers have a voice right around Australia. They're getting their brand in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. And it's the first time in Australian artisan cheese history that they've had this opportunity. And it's been amazing.
Yeah, indeed. Because, some of the artisan cheesemakers, because I go through your catalogue often because I want to look at cheeses that I can personally make. I don't want to steal their ideas or anything, but it's always good to look at new cheeses to make and then develop recipes for the curd nerd community that we have here, which is absolutely fantastic. And the reason that we order boxes of different cheeses, and the great thing, like you said, you have a hard, a soft, a stinky, and a blue, and so many people in Australia have no idea what a stinky cheese is. The washed rind cheeses are just a cut above the rest. You just can't get them in the supermarket because no supermarket wants their cheese shelf stinking, of smelly cheese. But the thing is, as soon as you bite into those cheeses, once they're properly ripe, they are just mind blowing. And same as a lot of blues as well. They're not hard to make. The affinage part's hard, but they're hard to get your hands on if you're just a commercial shopper in the supermarket.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me, a big part of what we do with our marketing is education, teaching. There's a lot of people out there who haven't been game enough to try stinky or blue cheeses because they haven't ever been exposed to great cheese.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of what we do. And we've definitely converted a lot of people who in the past have said, I can't do blue cheese, or, I'm not game enough to try that cheese that smells funny. So, a big part of that is that education, which, we're glad that we're able to do that and get more cheese out there that's great, as opposed to just the standard stuff that's in your supermarket.
Yeah, indeed. Well done, Helen. And you're absolutely right. Those sorts of cheeses, like I said, you'll never find them on the supermarket shelf. And a lot of the artisan cheesemakers that you guys promote their products, I've never heard of them in the real world. In my small circle, and it's not until you do a little bit of research. They may have the crappiest website on the planet, but they may make the most amazing cheeses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've certainly recognised and realised that cheesemakers would prefer to be left alone in their little cheese room, cheese cave,
just
hidden off from the world. And like you say, most of them have crappy websites. But I think that's where sort of cheese therapy has been successful in being able to have such a strong relationship with these guys, being able to promote them so that they get to focus on what they're really good at.
Yeah.
And we get to focus on what we're good at, which is just sharing their stories and being able to, get their passions across to people right around Australia.
Yeah, indeed. We've got a question from Kevin, who's a regular watcher, and Kevin says, "Are Sam and Helen shipping worldwide during COVID?" So that kind of leads me into your international arm, if you have one.
Yeah. Okay. So at this stage, no. We're setting up to do stuff in other countries at the moment.
Okay, so it's a work in progress at the moment.
Yes, 2021.
So you're getting, so at the moment you source Australian and some international cheeses, and sell those within the Australian market only.
Yeah, and so so look, there's small artisan makers right around the world. And particularly US has a very similar scene to Australia. They've got some great makers. And one of the beautiful things about Australia and the US is that, we are part of the new world of cheeses. We're not bound by all the laws that govern making a gorgonzola or a camembert or a brie. And so we see a lot more freedom in the cheese makers and a lot more interesting stuff being produced. And so, 2021, it's going to be more of an exploration of what the small artisan makers right around the world are doing.
Yeah.
Being able to just share what a local producer is making, within your county, your state, or your country.
Yeah, indeed. Very similar to when a home cheesemaker makes far too much cheese and has to share it with everybody as well, which happens often, that's for sure.
Yes.
If you look at my kitchen fridge, I've got 3 of the shelves that normally would have food in them. They have bits of cheese in them. So saving them for later, like you always do. Anyway, cool. So we've got lots of questions coming in. Probably let's find. Here's a statement. I think this might be one of your children, maybe.
That's
my brother.
Hi, Josh.
Oh, it's your brother.
Yeah, my brother's in the UK. Yeah, he's just going into lockdown again. Don't worry, Josh. We'll crack a lunchtime wine for you.
Nice indeed. We've also got a question. Let me have a look. Let's have a look. I don't know if it's all there. It's not. The problem is with this software, the questions are too long. But anyway, I'll read this one out. This is from Craig, who was on your stream as well. People often have a preconceived idea about how cheese tastes because of standardization. It's not until they taste artisan cheese that they realize that it's supposed to what it is supposed to taste like. And that's true. That is so true, because it's not until you taste, a blue that hasn't been, I don't know, all the good bits have taken out of it. Especially something like Roquefort from France, and you get a real, they don't call it Roquefort if it's not made with raw milk. So, as Will Studd often says, the best cheeses are made with raw milk, and it's extremely hard to get your hands on it, especially here in Australia for the home cheesemaker scene. Do you find that a lot of the cheeses that you guys supply from, say, Europe and UK are raw milk based, whereas the ones here in Australia are often pasteurized?
Yeah, I think that, Roquefort, for example, does come into Australia as raw milk, and that's big thanks to Will Studd, who battled the Australian government for about 2 years on that. Some other raw milk cheeses that do come in are only hard cheeses, particularly some of the Alpine cheeses, perhaps a Comte or something like that, where they have had a cooked curd, and it really reduces any risk that the Australian government thinks it can come from raw milk. Yeah. We're seeing a little bit of a renaissance in raw milk here in Australia. Some makers such as Section 28, Pecora Dairy, Prom Country are starting to make some cheeses from raw milk. But it's very, it's very small in terms of the number of cheeses that have been able to be produced. And, Will does often say that, raw milk, gives you the greatest flavors and the cheeses. I think for a lot of people, however, the only way to truly test that is to taste the same cheese, pasteurized and raw, side by side. And I think sort of the first step is for people, like you were saying, to try great artisan cheese, to really understand what the cheesemaker was trying to express in their making. And what we have been able to do is that we work, we've got a very short delivery time frame between cheesemaker and ending up on your table at home. So the cheesemaker is making cheese how they want to taste, but also maturing it in their case how they want it to taste.
Yeah.
And what that means is that if you get a cheese from a supermarket, it needs a use by date or a best before date of 6 to 8 weeks, and pretty much over that time the cheese pretty much dies. But our cheesemakers know this, and they deliver cheese to us with only a 2-3 week best before date. It's been matured, and by the time it gets to the person only a week later, it's really starting to develop some really big flavors. So that's artisan cheese for a lot of Australians right now it's like a new revelation.
Yeah, it is incredible. And you're right about the flavor difference. You buy a stabilized paste camembert, right, from the supermarket, which have to sit on the shelves for, like you said, 6 to 8 weeks, and they're like rubber. They're not. It's the camembert not even in the sense of the name. And I've eaten a Normandy camembert, and they're just gooey and oozy, and you never ever see that in the supermarket. But when we get camembert style or a white bloomy rind from Cheese Therapy, I know that it's going to be slightly oozy, and it's going to be like the real deal. Maybe not made with raw milk like it is in Normandy, but the Australian style or the expression of that cheesemaker. So, and that's the great thing that I like about home cheese making as well, is that when you taste the cheese, people sometimes go, gee, this is so strong, or that has a totally different flavor that I'm aware in the supermarket. So
yeah, exactly. And for the home cheesemaker, being able to taste how, like a professional cheesemaker is making cheeses, tasting that, this is how, for example, Apostle Way sort of mature their cheese, or their brie style or something like that. And then can I try and replicate that? I think now what we're doing is giving the home cheesemaker a cheesemaker benchmark, so to speak, and being able to, okay, that's how it's meant to taste. Let's see if I can replicate that and make it better.
Yeah, and look as well. The looks are always, you when you eat food, you obviously eat by the look first, right? And a lot of the cheeses, yeah. So a lot of people, when you look at the supermarket ones, they're just standard. They look the same every single time. But I know when I make, say, a bloomy rind cheese, sometimes it's got total coverage of the bloom, sometimes it hasn't. But when you crack it open, if it's gooey in the middle, it's perfect, and it's not all about looks, especially some of the blue cheeses as well, where you look at the rind of the blue cheeses, and absolutely they are covered in blue mold. You'll never see that in supermarkets or anything like that, because they don't want to shock the customer if that's the case. But and I get so many questions thrown at me, which is a good thing, but they go, it doesn't look like this. I've never seen a blue like this. I said, well, you're the one creating it. That's the crux of the situation, which is, and it's hard to get across to people that when they make their own cheese, it's not gonna look like what it does in the supermarket. So
100%.
Yeah, cool. All right, so I've got some I think I've got some more questions. Let's have a look. And if anybody on the chat has any questions for Sam and Helen or myself, that's fine. I'll even jump in there and answer some. Let's have a look. This is a one-man show. It's difficult to look at the questions and look at the guests. Okay, Martin from Scotland's got a question. And Martin says, what would you do if a wax cheddar produces air? There was a big air bubble after 2 weeks in the cheese cave. I'll answer that one. You guys just relax. Okay. Martin, what you should, depends on the culture and the milk, obviously. So if you use raw milk, then there may be some cultures, lactic bacteria that may be producing some CO2. If you introduce starter cultures into it, as long as it was a mesophilic and not an aromatic mesophilic, because aromatic mesophilics produce gas, so that may be a cause as well. It also could be a sign of late blown cheese, so which is not, it's okay, it's edible, no problems at all. But if you cut into the cheese and it looks sponge-like, it's either been infected with yeast from around the kitchen, or it's been the milk may not have been as good as it could be. For instance, it could be infected by coliform, which can be alleviated by pasteurization, unfortunately. So hopefully that answers your question. Megan has a statement there. She says, I have loved my cheese therapy boxes. Megan's a big fan, I think, of cheese therapy.
Fantastic.
And yeah, we love them as well. So another question from Martin from Scotland, but it's a bit too long, so I'll read this one out. So my Port Salut is too tall. I used a too narrow mold. It is in the box in my cave, but it has 2 big cracks in the side. Can I repair this? Oil, butter, or eat now? Has a month left to ripen. Martin, my advice to you is that I would probably eat it now. It's a washed rind cheese, so you're not going to get rid of the cracks. It doesn't matter what you do. If you wax the cheese, then it'll stifle the bacterial growth on the outside, and it won't make the center of the cheese gooey like it should be. Port Salut has a very strong flavor, so if you oil or put butter on it, it probably won't work. So best to eat it now. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. We have another question, but this one's too long as well. But let's have a look. Did I get the right one? Sandro. I tried. Yep, right. So Sandro, and I don't know if you guys experienced this. And I might see if Sam, you've got a comment, Sam or Helen, you're both cheesemongers in your own right. So we'll see if you've got an answer to this one. Sandra says, I tried a semi-soft cheese recipe based on Jarlsberg. And in the 2 weeks that it is in the box at room temperature, the problem is the constant smell of ammonia. Any suggestions?
Yeah. Go. Sorry, go.
No, that's all right. You go. See if you've got an answer for this.
Yeah, look, we we see many cheeses that are starting to develop that ammonia smell. It's all a matter of, can that ammonia smell dissipate when you leave it out, let it, it's already at temperature. Yeah. It's one of those things when, we're starting to see a cheese that's really ripe, really mature, the rind's starting to develop those smells. Is there something that you can do with it? If you take the rind off, is the pate inside spot on? Yeah, it's a tough one. It's because every cheese, really starts to develop those. Yeah. It's a matter of, can you block that ammonia smell from your mind and enjoy what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with the case of Jarlsberg, I think he's creating the eyes at the moment as well. And yeah, if it's left in the ripening box and you don't let the air circulate, because you've got an enclosed environment when you're ripening the cheese, I find, and Sandro, a little bit of advice for you is that when you're when you've got it at room temperature, all I did was wax the cheese and I put it on my shelf. And you can see the shelf behind. There it is up there. I just put it on a cheese mat and put it on the shelf because, you know, my office is around 18 degrees Celsius, which is perfect for a Jarlsberg to develop its eyes in. Now, if you've got it as a natural rind cheese, then yes, it's going to off-gas ammonia because that's a byproduct of the ripening process. And especially if you're not letting any airflow around it or have it totally enclosed in wax, then it's going to create ammonia. And as Sam and Helen said, it's just one of those things that cheeses do when they break down. Ripening of cheese is decaying milk. That's what it is. So you've just got to remember, when you make cheese, you are controlling the rotting of the cheese, of the milk, and that's how you make cheese. So you add all these things in. It's just how we like it. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Get it out of that ripening box. Anyway, see if we got some more questions down here.
I saw some good questions there about goat's milk and what kind of cheeses to make, because here in Australia, obviously goats are starting to kid and starting to produce some milks from it.
Yeah.
This year we've seen some interesting cheeses coming from our cheese makers and really trying to explore what is possible. You know, Yarra Valley Dairies, I noticed there in the chats, you know, they've been, I guess, a bit of a gold standard. Same with Meredith. You know, just making some good basic, you know, goat's milk. But if we look at Milawa, for example, they've been starting to explore what they can do. So making some interesting wash rind goat's cheeses, which you don't tend to see anywhere.
Yeah.
Particularly here in Australia. And just the way that they react, you know, just develop a good pungency. You cut them open and they just ooze everywhere. Yeah, really, you know, rather than developing a sort of a white mold, you know, goat's log kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, just trying new things. And, you know, it's quite easy to be doing your white mold, you know, like a black Savarin or a white Savarin log, like what Yarra Valley Dairies do.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you know, do a portion of those as a wash run and see what happens with that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all, making your own cheese is all about experimentation as well. And I tried this goat's milk Gouda once, and I tell you what, and because Gouda is traditionally made with cow's milk, right? And in the Netherlands, it's made with raw milk. But I tried, there was this aged goat's milk Gouda, and it was 1 year old. And I tell you what, it blew my mind. The taste, the flavor, the crystals that were within it as well were absolutely fantastic. Do you have any, do you often get from cheesemakers harder cheeses, or are they trying to experiment more with the quicker aged cheeses?
Yeah, most of the cheesemakers seem to do go towards the softer cheeses, but there are some cheesemakers that really have a passion for the harder Alpine style cheeses. Particularly Section 28 is one who he does a lot of beautiful Alpine style cheeses, and I think most of his cheeses are hard or semi-hard cheese. I think the struggle is, because of the time it takes to age these harder cheeses, it's just a more of a financial cash flow issue than anything else. It's just, you know, it's better cash flow if you can just, you know, pump it out. But yeah, there's definitely a few that really do concentrate on that harder style. Pie and Garner do great cheddar. Mafra, they do. I think all their cheese is hard Mafra.
All English style cheeses. Yeah. It's interesting. You know, from an economic point of view, like Helen was saying, to do soft cheeses, you know, you can just churn those things around. But as every home cheesemaker would know, the labour of love that goes into a hard cheese, and hoping to God that, you know, in 12 months' time,
it's going to taste okay.
That nerve part right, and you know, when you open it up, you're hoping that it's going to be spot on. And you imagine that from a commercial sense, you know, having to pay for the room where you've been maturing, maybe a ton of cheese for 12 months or so. Pie and Garner's cheddar room must be about the size of an acre, I think.
Yeah.
And it's packed, floor to ceiling, full of cloth-bound cheddar. And, it's so easy for something to stuff something up. And you won't know it until 12 months, 18, 24 months time.
But then, Stone and Crow, Jack Holman actually was the cheesemaker for a while at Yarra Valley Dairy. He's had his own brand going for only a couple of years. He does a hard cheese that I think he has different levels of the maturity of that, his moonshine. That's probably one of the really small guys that's making some awesome hard cheese. Yeah. It's interesting.
That's a good point, Helen, because with the cheddar style, you can eat it at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And if they slowly release, then they're going to get some commercial payback, which is good for them. And like you said, some cash flow, which is important. And I always, especially during, when I make a hard cheese, I'll film a taste test at 3 months. Then I'll film a taste test at 6 months and then at 12 months. So people get an idea what the different flavors and what to expect as they go along, because they're going to be totally different. Cheese, like I said, cheese is a living thing. It grows and matures and rots and does what it's supposed to. I know rotten's not a word you associate with food, but it is. It just is in the cheese world, which is fantastic. So I've got a question. Here's a curly one from Leonidas. Says, right, Gav, Sam, and Helen. I am a long-time curd nerd, but I am a person who actually can't stand cheese.
Ooh,
right.
Okay.
I don't like cheddar, brie, and any of the standard ones. What cheese should I try to convert me? Thanks.
I've got one. You were talking about goat's milk Gouda before.
Yeah.
There's an American brand called Cypress Grove, and they actually make some of their cheeses in Holland. It's called Lamb Chopper. So it's made from sheep's milk. It's a Gouda style. It's got the crystals in it, but it's very, it's nice and sweet and, sort of butterscotch. And it's every time we do this cheese at maybe a cheese tasting or something like that, and whenever we put it into one of our international packs, everybody just loves it.
Yeah.
It's just such a great cheese.
I was actually, I don't know if you're in Australia or not. Sorry, Leonidas. But I was actually going to say a Persian feta might be a nice one to try as well. It's it's such a different texture to the other cheeses, and it's light, and you can put it on a bruschetta. It's really lovely. And we were having a chat with Will Studd a few weeks ago, and his opinion is that Persian feta is the Australian cheese. That's what he calls, that's in his mind.
Well, it was created here in Australia, Persian feta.
Yeah, so perhaps that's one to try as well.
Yeah, I think we should have picked a better name for Persian feta.
Yes. It's not really very
Aussie marinated cheese or something like that. Because, and I think Meredith Dairy have done that. They just call it marinated goat's cheese.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in fact, Kim and I had some of my Persian feta that I made last night on a cheese platter. And it was absolutely divine. The flavors, the normal strong flavor you get with a well-matured feta. And yeah, we could have spread it or we just eat it in the block, but the flavors from the marinade they're great. A great suggestion, Helen. And that one from what was it, lamb chop? Is that what they called it, Sam?
Lamb chopper. Yeah.
Lamb chopper. Oh, close.
So I see a few people's piping in. So yeah, Cypress Grove HQ. It's in California, but they make a couple. So they make a goat's milk version, sheep's milk in Holland. They're beautiful cheeses. They're just they're great. Yeah,
and they make Humboldt Fog as well. Is that right?
They may do. We haven't tried that one.
Okay. We've got a question, a super chat from Karen, and I'll just kill the light before anybody has a. Thank you, Karen, for your super chat. Karen says, I got my milk goat in July, I've made Gouda, Emmental, Gruyere, and I can't wait to try these. Great curd set, excellent end volume. And it is great to try, like you said, all those different sorts of cheeses. And thanks, Karen, for letting us know that. And thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate it. But yeah, like you said, Sam, you can make all sorts of cheese from goat's milk. And some people are really shy. They just make the cherv, and they make a marin. I can't remember. I can't pronounce the name, but the ash log, coated log, with the straw through the middle.
Oh yes, yep.
Savin? No, I can't say it.
Savin, yeah.
Savin. That's it. I was going to say Sauvignon, but that's a wine.
Too early for that.
Probably nice to eat with a Sauvignon.
Yes, I struggle with French pronunciations. In fact, most European pronunciations, and it's a theme of the channel. When I pronounce a cheese wrong, people inevitably in the comments like to have correct me, which is fine. I don't mind, because come from country South Australia. There wasn't a French person there. I wouldn't know. So yeah. Leonidas said great advice. So there you go. Some great feedback there. There is another. I did see another question about. Oh, Craig, more of us. Oh, another one of these long ones, unfortunately. Right. So Craig says, it's Fawn. My wife hates blue cheese. Oh, okay. Yet she absolutely loved the Stilton that I make. And many people that attend my workshops are the same. They wind up liking Stilton. Indeed, I tasted a Stilton last night from the UK, and it must have travelled the wrong way around the world, because I think it was a little bit too old. As soon as you cut into it, it was crumbly as all heck, instead of, like the smooth sort of blue Stilton-y you get when it's fairly fresh. But yeah, cheeses that are sent from overseas, that are sitting on the supermarket shelf forever, it's just not right, if that makes sense. They're way too old.
Yeah,
it's really hard at the moment. France has been going through industrial action on their wharves since about November last year, and there's just been massive delays. For us, for example, here in Australia, trying to bring cheeses in, but it affects the rest of the world. All of those cheeses, for example, Stilton's, all the hard cheeses, they come by boat. And so, you look on a map and see how far away Australia is from absolutely everything.
Yes.
It's a long boat ride. And it's very difficult for us in Australia to be able to get something that is spot on. Quite often we'll nail it, but particularly if it's going onto a supermarket shelf, it then has to sit there for another 6-8 weeks. When the containers come into Melbourne Port, we basically get them straight out of the container and start, chopping them up, wrapping them, and sending them out, because we know that, the cheeses can't stand too much longer. They've just had a big journey. They're starting to get a little bit tired.
Yeah.
I think too, like you don't really see any Australian blue cheeses in the supermarkets much either, which is a shame, because there are some amazing blue makers here in Australia. Berries Creek, Tarago River, Apostle Way. There's quite a few of them that make world-class blue cheese. Yet I think Shadows of Blue from Tarago River is probably the one that you might see in the super, which is a brilliant cheese, and we've converted a lot of non-blue people to like blue with that cheese. I call it the entry-level blue because it's almost like a brie. But and I think that a lot of Australians haven't actually been exposed to really good blue cheese the way that blue cheese is meant to taste. So I think for you guys making cheese at home, you're in a position where you can do that, and you can get your friends to try it and say, this is how blue cheese is meant to taste, not like what's in the supermarket.
Indeed, and like those silver foil wrapped Danish Viking blue cheese is not what blue cheese is supposed to taste like.
Right.
No, that's what has ruined thousands of Australians from their blue experience. Back in the 80s, that was the only blue that you could buy. And I do a lot of corporate tastings, and all the people. I always do a poll: who doesn't eat blue cheese? There will be a quarter of the room that'll put their hand up, and I make every single person try the blue cheese that I have on offer, because I know that they're actually going to enjoy it. And out of those quarter of the people, there still might be one or two that just go, yeah, I still don't do blue cheese. But being able to change people's perception about what they're eating, and if people just closed their eyes and tasted, then that will sort of get them past that visual offensiveness of what a blue can be to them.
Yeah, indeed. And some of the best blue cheeses I've ever had are direct from the Artisan cheesemaker when I've visited their little storefronts that they have sometimes. And obviously some of the best blues I've ever tasted are the ones that I've made. But I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or anything, but you do get a far better product if you get it fresh and it hasn't been sitting in a container for a long time. Or sorry, not on the container, but like you said, you get it straight out of the container, the refrigerated container, out to the consumer, whereas the supermarket will just let it sit there. So but yeah, I did have another question. I've forgotten what it was. I'm trying to read everybody else's questions, and I had a question. But yeah, so some of the cheeses that I made, the blue ones, are like the replicas of other people's cheeses. There was one called Buttermilk Blue, which it just was a mess to make. But once you tasted the final product, it was absolutely amazing. And same as the Shropshire Blue that just fell apart, the orange style cheese with blue veins through it. It was one of the strongest and most flavoursome blues that I've ever had. So 100% right about blue cheeses. They're underrated, and I don't know if Kim's going to chime in here. She's here somewhere. She never liked blue cheese when she was a smoker, was another thing as well. She found that as soon as she stopped smoking and I gave her a good blue cheese, she couldn't believe the flavour. It was just totally different than what she'd experienced after those nicotine stick things. But anyway. Okay. Craig's got a good point, and he says that we all need a starting point to know what cheese tastes like, and unfortunately for most of it, it is supermarkets.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
it's very difficult to know what the benchmark is, but I think that's one of the things of being a home cheesemaker, striving to beat what the professionals are doing, because you've got much greater control. And often there's so much passion that goes into making cheese at home. Just being able to try new things and just being able to, look, okay, that's my benchmark. How can I do it? We do international cheeses through Cheese Therapy as well as Australians. And our Australian cheesemakers actually like it because they set the European cheeses as their benchmark.
Yeah.
So they know, okay, this is what I need to beat. And they actually, they do appreciate that there are internationals coming in. And, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be better than that.
Yeah, and I encourage all home cheesemakers to do that, to give it a go, experiment. I know it's very hard, though, when you start making cheese yourself to even get the recipe right, let alone figure out what is actually happening when I make this cheese. Why does the milk curdle when I add rennet to it? Why does it start to shrink when I stir it? Why does it do all these things? It's very difficult when you're a beginner cheesemaker to reach that level where I will dip my toe into changing something in the recipe and see what happens. Because, personally, they've spent, up to $20-30 on the milk they've bought, if they bought really good milk. When they're making one cheese instead of experimenting with a whole vat, 200 litres of milk, sometimes it's not possible, but they try and strive to get the best they possibly can. That's for sure.
Yeah, like cheese making, as you know, it's half science, half art. And we spend a lot of time with cheesemakers actually making cheese with them. And our cheesemakers, they're still doing everything by hand. They're still cutting curds by hand. They're still draining the whey off and, scooping it into their hoops. So the only difference I see with a lot of these sort of more commercial cheesemakers is that now they're doing it in 1,000-litre vats as opposed to, say, 20, 30, 50 litres at home. And, they still get it wrong. Like, they still have to...
Well, they still have their little stuff-ups now and
just
again.
That when they get it wrong, there goes 1,000 litres of milk.
But that's all part of the process too. Like, you can't... If you're going to experiment and try making something new, you have to have a stuff-up because it's how you learn. It's part of that process, which is important, I think.
No, definitely. And, the only way you're going to learn is by making mistakes. Which is why I try to make the videos that I make on my channel a little bit simple. Like, there's no pH steps. You don't have to measure the pH of the milk. You don't what are some of the other? You don't do any tests on the cheese because it's out of the reach of the home cheesemaker. So if you try and make it as simple as possible, then people will at least have a go and follow it, which is a good thing. And there are so many passionate cheesemakers, as you can see in the chat.
Yeah, definitely.
That really want to make cheese. I'll just answer this question. This is from James, and James says, I was wondering if there's any way to flavour skyr like cheddar or Gruyere Colby, making a super soft cheese. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but skyr is an Icelandic cheese. It's more like a yogurt than anything else.
Okay.
It's very thin, can be quite runny. And James, my answer to that question is the only way you're going to flavour skyr into something like cheddar, Gruyere, or Colby is actually add those cheeses to it. That's the only way you're going to get that flavour. It's a very young, 2-day-old cheese if you make it yourself. And you're not going to get those flavours unless you use commercial cheese powder, which is not the best product to use in anything that they do. Anyway, so sorry, James, you're going to have to just make those cheeses. Dig out. Try and make some cheddar. Where are we? I do have another question for you guys. Where was it?
We made camel milk cheese the other day, Gavin. About 2 weeks ago, we were filming at a camel farm. And if you ever think that what's the process like of making cheese out of camel's milk?
Yeah, I often get asked that actually.
They've had about 3 or 4 cheesemakers come in to try and make cheese out of it. And the curds are just so delicate that you have to do everything finely, just, sort of almost ladle it off. And they just had frustrated cheesemakers. Yeah. And so what they ended up having to do was train 2 people to not bring in all of their ideas of cheese making, because that was what the issue was with the cheesemakers. I make cheese. I know how to make cheese. I'm going to make cheese from this milk.
Yeah.
And it behaved completely differently. And it was a very laborious process. And camel milk costs $20 a litre. It's definitely one you don't want to get wrong. But it was interesting for us particularly to see how an animal like a camel firstly gets milk, because it's not one of those things that you often think about. But also then to see that through the process and then they even made a cheddar out of camel's milk. It was absolutely fantastic.
Would have been extremely difficult because, you look at the Middle East where the camel is typically raised, you'll find there's not a lot of hard cheeses that come out of camel's milk. They're all labna style, soft yogurty sort of cheeses, which you can make yogurt no problems at all out of camel's milk. I know that because a lot of Middle Eastern friends have told me that. But certainly it's very difficult to get a strong curd set. And you really, like you said, you have to ladle it off and drain it before you can do anything to it. So, but you're right. Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. I don't know if you know this question, but John's asked, what is the fat percent content of camel's milk? Is it almost as fine as goat's milk?
I'm not too sure about the sort of the fat content. It's a very, very smooth curd.
It's very clean.
In your mouth. So, we tried some, for example, feta, Persian feta.
Yeah.
It actually, I think the name Persian feta almost suits camels.
Yes, it would. It would.
In your mouth, it's extremely fine. Now, it tastes like cow.
Yeah, it's similar to a cow. It has a very clean, silky taste to it.
Yeah, really, really fine. It's got a very small molecule. Just beautiful. And people who can't tolerate any kind of, dairy like cow, goat, sheep, don't have an issue with camel. It's about the only dairy product that people can, with allergies, can actually have.
Oh, that's good. So it must be something different. The lactose molecule must be different.
Yeah, I think that's
so people can stomach it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of science thrown at me on the day.
All right.
And big words.
Yeah, big words. Yeah. But Wendy's just said, and we're getting close to the end of the show. We've got 9 minutes to go. Wendy said, I'm loving everything in this discussion. Thank you. And thanks, Wendy. It's been great having Sam and Helen on. We hang on, we've got an answer to your question. Here we go. He's looked on the internet. John, he's from San Francisco. He's a regular watcher. He says, they say the fat content of dromedary camel's milk is between 1.2 and 6.4%. Short chain fatty acids in camel milk are low, but the long chain fatty acids are high in content. So that's why it's very hard to set a curd, especially if you got really low fat milk as well. So what can you do? Anyway, I'll move that. But yes, I think we'll wrap up the show now anyway. But thank you so much, Sam and Helen. It's been a pleasure having you on today. It really has. And thank you for giving some of the questions a go, that's for sure. And I apologize to all the viewers that I didn't get to everybody's question. But it hasn't been a regular Ask the Cheeseman kind of show, but it's been a lot of fun having a guest on the show. I'd like to do this a lot more often. And it'd be great actually to get some home cheese makers who've got a few cheeses under their belt to bring them on as well as artisan cheese makers, if they're willing to be as photogenic as you two.
We'll pick them for you.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, as long as they can string a couple of words together, I'm sure the curd nerd community would love it. Well, thanks for joining us, Sam and Helen. I really appreciate turning up on the show. So, any final words?
No, we've had an absolute ball.
Great time. Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having us on the show. And thank you to all you curd nerds out there who've been patient with waiting for your questions to be answered, thus talking, because we've had a great time.
Now, if you, thank you, Helen. And if you guys, if anybody wants to, within Australia, haven't heard of cheese therapy and want to have a go at some of the lovely cheese therapy boxes that they send out, check out www.cheesetherapy.com.au, and you'll be amazed by the variety, and it changes on a monthly basis, doesn't it, guys?
Yeah,
it certainly does.
Yeah, obviously, because cheeses ripen pretty quick. You've got to change the selection, and some, like you said it before, Helen, sometimes you feature an individual artisan cheesemaker.
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. So you could do no better than popping over to Cheese Therapy, Curd Nerds, and go and have a look if you want to try something different before you have a go at making it. So that's my suggestion. And most curd nerds will probably know that I did a a cheese challenge in February last year, where every single day I tried a different type of cheese, and I found the best ones were from artisan cheesemakers and the crappiest ones were for commercial cheesemakers. So which wasn't too hard to pick, but anyway. All right, well, I'll finish the show off there. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for your kind super chat, Karen. I appreciate that. And thanks, everybody. And thanks, Kim, for moderating the stream. I know on YouTube there's some funny sorts of people on there occasionally, but yeah, don't forget that you can support the show. Kim's put the links into the YouTube chat, and you can see them there. We'll finish off. Thanks for watching, Curd Nerds, and I will see you next week, same time, same channel, and I'll be doing it by my lonesome next week. So I'll get into all of your technical cheese making questions. So come back next week and I'll give them a crack. We'll see how that goes. All right, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.